This is the Para 4, the Star Wars inspired bomber craft, affectionately and somewhat obviously known as the Bowcaster. Inspired by the venerable workhorse that is the Y-Wing, as well as the Swivel wing concept layout of the F-14 Tomcat. In this video, I'll take you through the thoughts behind the design of this ship, and I'll be comparing it to the Y-Wing in particular. I will also reveal some surprising Modelshop influences. Welcome to Technouveau. My name is Rasmus. I'm an art director and concept designer with 20 years of professional games development experience, and I'm on a mission to inspire and empower your creativity by discussing concept design, processes, and all the creative fields that are adjacent to this. If you're interested in supporting the channel, I have a Patreon where you can dive in and support and simply get these videos ad-free as a starter. You can also dive into the mentor community and get much deeper into the grid. I also have Technouveau.net where you can access individual 3D models as well as big chunky asset packs, as well as a little merch just for, this is not my merch, anyway, as well as merch just for kicks. So if you enjoy discussing concept design, if you enjoy the creative process, and if you enjoy diving into what makes us tick and what makes designs work, be it science fiction or otherwise, I'll see you out there. Beyond that, let's get to the video. So here we are in Photoshop with an older poster design I've made, and conveniently it shows you some of the conceptual thinking that's in here. So the first thing to note here is the two-pilot cockpit. Actually, the 3D model has 4 seats inside it, so 1, 2, 1, 2. But this one, I think it works better at a scale where there's 2 pilots. It's heavily shielded, which means there's no front window, and that gives this ship it's part of its unique character. We'll get back to that later. Here we have some forward cooling for the cannons for when in atmosphere, and obviously the swing wing foils as you saw in the intro clip. Here I have a good and grimy version, again inspired by the grime of the F-14 and MiG-23 and things like that. When I follow model kit makers on Instagram, I enjoy their weathering, and so here I'm pretending to make a model kit, albeit in Photoshop. The idea here, of course, is that the engines swivel out to give the ship more maneuverability, and of course it gives us a wonderful chance to have a design that changes as well. Inspired by the F-14, but also certainly inspired by the X-Wing as well. Before, top-mounted defensive laser turret operated by the co-pilot. So this one, we'll see that in 3D in a little bit. Main guns, these 2 big bad boys here. Here we have sort of a vent system for the guns that I think that has sort of a nice iconic shape to it. And the idea is that in here, this power housing, or the whatever container this is, that it actually houses a system that allows weapons to switch from turbo lasers to ion cannons. Again, in terms of Star Wars lore, I have no idea if that's a thing or not, or if it's silly, but the idea is that there would be a little time gap where the cannons would be inoperable when that switch is made. And I figured for people who might want to play role-playing games with it, or think of it as it would be integrated in an armada or something, or board game, that it could be fun to have a rule like that. Okay, you can switch your weapon, but while you're doing so, there's a few seconds, 30 seconds of inoperability. Might be interesting. Yeah, again, the valve system here. Armor plating, of course, covers the entire body. And then I think for the engine, what's fun is this little nozzle here. Again, so if we're talking about maneuverability in space, and even though Star Wars technically isn't particularly credible in terms of maneuverability, space, lack of atmosphere and whatnot, they are more focused, the ships and the movements are more focused on having a design and a sensation that feels relatable, and as such feels like they're operating in atmosphere. Here are some nozzles that lean them a little bit more towards traditional zero-G maneuverability, which like Apollo and whatnot, which of course is happening through compressed air or other types of nozzle systems. And you can imagine when the wings flip out that these nozzles would aid in maneuverability. Rear stabilizer here, and then I imagine some sort of decoy or jamming pod system in the tail. So beyond the fun task of griming things up here, that is visible in this poster design. I think there are a few other concepts that are worth talking about in this particular blueprint overview. As you can see, I'm still experimenting a little bit with the aesthetics of this, and I'm sure I'll land it someday, but haven't quite landed it yet. So now we have a white clay render look on the cutting mat here. But back to the point, back to the ship. As I mentioned, the armor cladding of this particular turtle / manta ray body is really what is the first thing that you notice. Of course, neatly followed by, let's see, we get a little brush here, neatly followed by these two engine pods out here. So the design really has this curvature of the front, like this, pods on either side, a big soft body, and then these two spiky cannons. That's really how I see the initial shape. And of course, you can see the front wing here being the heavy part, and then having these strengtheners being the spindly part. So there is this sort of sensation here. Again, I don't have to explain to you why we call it the Bowcaster. Yeah, and of course the central cockpit, and then again these two guns here. In terms of the guns and engines, one of the things I like about this design is that we have this joint here for the swivel wing, F-14 inspired swivel wing. We have this big engine component compartment out here, and then we have this shape that comes right back here to the what feels like a main power unit, power supply, whatever, for the main gun. And I really think that that little triangular visual shape there is really strong, and I think it really works well. If these would have been round, it would probably have been a little too heavy-handed, so I have this canister shape instead. Again, here we talk about the defensive cannon, classic trope from Second World War, used many places in the Star Wars universe. And when we look at the ship from the front, you can see how flat it is. It's really flat. Actually, I would say, looking at it now, maybe a little bit too flat. It's quite pancakey. But of course, from this angle, the ship is dominated quite heavily by these two engine cones here, and I think it gives it sort of a de Havilland Mosquito flavor. Night fighter bomber, Allied night fighter bomber from the Second World War. And here you can see the flat body again, and then this maw here with these cooling elements, which gives it sort of a manta ray krill eating kind of flavor. Again, if we see this as a manta ray, you know, how do they look like? Something like that, right? With the maw here being the krill device. If you've seen my videos, you know I always like giving my ship design sort of a naturalistic and animalistic flavor to it, and I certainly think that this could have been called the Manta, if not for the Bowcaster. You know, maybe depending on where you are in the verse, the ship will have different sort of affectionate call signs. Again, from the side, not much to say really. It's not particularly interesting, and that's what I mean with the flatness of the ship. Maybe these rear wings up here, maybe they should have come down further a little bit. Now that I look at it, it feels a little like a missed opportunity to do something. But that aside, that's really the ship. Central axis, main body, these triangles here on either side, and then of course big engines. If we compare it more directly to the Y-wing, again you can see some really interesting who am I to say? Anyway, you can see some crossovers in terms of design. You can see the cockpit that has this sort of shell-like appearance, and then this body again somewhat animalistic on the Y-wing, and in a sense I've capitalized on that concept with the cockpit shell and a body, cockpit shell and a body, just scaled it up in a sense. And then having this, of course, where the Y-wing has this very, very greebly detailed part of the body, I have my detail there sort of spread out a little bit differently from here. But in a sense, that's partly why this support structure should feel spindly and not solid, to give it that sense Again, back on the tail, we have these strengtheners here, back supporting the tail here. And of course, it's a slight reference to the thrust adjusters here for the Y-wing, right? The classic tail shape. Again, from the front, you can really see the familiarity, right? 2 engine pods, like so, and a main body and a cockpit. Main body, cockpit. Very, very, very similar. And from the side, I love the side profile of the Y-wing. I think the cockpit is so cool. I think maybe this blueprint is a little wrong. I think maybe the cockpit comes down a bit, but I don't recall exactly. And what I've done is I've made my design a little bit more hunchbacked, because of course the engines come all the way up front, covering the side view, rather than the Y-wing, which has the engines mounted further back. I really squished the cockpit into the profile, giving it this sort of hunchbacked look. And I think the ship actually manages to be both reasonably friendly, namely the animalistic side there, and reasonably menacing. And actually I think the Y-wing has that too. It's sort of junky and friendly looking, but it's also really, really badass looking, particularly this muscle car nose here, the hollow gap of the nose of the Y-wing. It looks really, really badass when it's flying towards the camera like this. So the last thing I just want to mention on this one is, we all know, well, the nerds will know that of course Lucas was obsessed with hot rod culture and so on and so forth, and he had this idea of a used universe where ships would be taken apart and customized, and parts would be removed to save weight and so on and so forth. And some of you might have seen the version of the Y-wing which has a solid body. I think it looks something like that. And then the idea here would be that the rebels simply have taken away all the superfluous panels to save weight and add speed and whatnot. I'm not exactly sure this idea existed when the Y-wing was designed. Maybe not. Maybe somebody can let me know. Of course, I've read the making of and seen the documentaries and whatnot, but I'm not sure how expressed this was at this point in the art department. Again, I'm not talking about the extended lore. I'm not talking about the universe and the verse building that happened after the fact, Clone Wars and all that. I'm talking about what happened 75, 76 in the workshop when they were designing this. Did they envision that this part here would have been covered in a different type of body panels? Or was it simply because they were running out of time and parts and had to get going real quick? Of course, the shooting and all that had to happen rather quickly. But nevertheless, this is where the last part of the inspiration comes in. The Modelshop inspiration, where this tail is kind of unfinished on the ship. So this whole part here of my ship is kind of unfinished, and it's almost like, well, beyond the fact that this aesthetic right here with the spindly bits fits with these spindly bits, beyond that, it feels like I'm running out of time here. And I kind of like that aesthetic to the ship. It feels like some of those odd decisions that a model shop might make in an effort to reach a deadline. But this takes us into Blender. I just want to show it to you in 3 dimensions. Again, as we can see in the diagram before, the very, very low profile with the manta ray mouth, the engine components and all that. Oh, I see this is actually an older model. Oh man. Okay, anyway, what I really wanted to show you here in this one is the animation of the wings extending. So I modeled it like this, and I gave it colors and everything, supporting a wing that was like this permanently. And then as I was working on it, I chipped away at it and added these bracing struts. And then of course I had to come back in. Okay, if that's the case, then I want to model it tucked in under itself. It's almost like it's carrying its arms underneath itself, almost like a diving peregrine falcon or something. And you can see these shoulder pads here on this nose, and you can see again, these were yellow back then, these wheels here. And I think one of the funny things is the over animation I did on these sliding elements here. You can see the yellow out here, how that clicks violently into place, and then the whole engine compartment rattles, clickety click. And that is some of the tricks that you do in, let me just play it for you guys, some of the tricks you do in animation to really make it relatable and make it hit home, right? That click. It's quite overdone. I mean, the tolerances, the mechanical tolerances here are outrageous, but of course it is to give you a sense of paths. Now that I see it, I would want to do it a little bit more, actually. You can also see I changed the angles of the engines as well for the same reason, to give it that clunky character as it moves. And I think things like this, it's like adding slightly surprising angles and whatnot to the animation, really helps this mechanical sensation come alive. It feels like an old school model building techniques. So I just jumped into the newest version of Blender, in which I can't really show the animation for some unknown reason. Same model, same setup. Of course, it's a finished model, but I mean, why is it so slow? Anyway, maybe some of the experts know. By the way, this is not a slow computer. It's a i9 Intel whatever with a 4090 card, so it should be plenty fast. But regardless, here I put in a little BMS guy for scale, and as here you can see that the interior actually doesn't fit this guy yet. This guy anymore. Have I killed the windows there? Stuff happens when I move quick in the 3D software. Apologies. But here you see the final model with the tail boom and everything. You can also see that I haven't actually resolved the design. You can see that the strengtheners here are hollow, and you can see that they don't really fit in the inside the body. It's a rough estimation that I say to myself, this can be solved if you would want to. But for the sake of argument, in the intro scene, in the shot you saw there, it is not needed. And so I would say you would solve that for a game maybe, or you would solve that for a film series, but for a clip, nah, not really. You don't need it. Obviously, you can get into trouble if you need to get close all of a sudden, if you change your mind. But I think it's important to keep a level head and not overdo design solutions. And I think, as you saw, I hope you'll agree with me that it works quite well in the intro shot there, and that there wouldn't be a good reason to spend 2 more weeks noodling with the design to get what I wanted. Although the balance of complexity and solving a design to perfection versus being so sloppy that you forgot that you've deleted windows in the second half of the ship here, that balance between order and precision and not giving a hoot and just moving ahead is certainly an interesting topic for a talk one day. And it's certainly something that we find everywhere in the industry. However, I would tend to argue that design work in 3D as well as film assets tend to be insanely overdone in terms of resolution and numbers of textures and whatnot. That's just my opinion. I think that there's something about a sense of perfection that hurts productions. Again, I lean that way, so I'm sure you'll tell me I'm wrong in the comments. And there are certainly cases that speak to the opposite viewpoint, but that's my gut feel. But anyway, this is the Para 4 Bowcaster, a ship design that I really enjoyed. And one of the things I like is that it is so wide, and now that I see it, I remember having some sketches. I tried to find them for you guys, but I couldn't quite find them. When I was sketching this ship, I wanted to make it even wider. I think I've seen some Star Warsian designs that were quite wide, and I want to get back into the width of things. But yeah, that's this little friendly manta ray bowcaster creature here. Fun to do and fun to animate some of that mechanical aspects of the ship. Yeah, and clunky little unfinished model shop in a hurry to reach a deadline kind of flavor to it, which I actually think adds to that charm of of old school model shop designs. Let's check out some renders.